I never thought a night like this would happen. 30 years, 3 decades of marriage, countless memories, arguments, reconciliations, and silent moments that carried more weight than words ever could. My name is Adrian, and I've been married to Evelyn for 30 years. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration, a simple gathering of close friends and family to mark the life we've built together. We had laughed, danced, and shared old stories. Yet somewhere between the clinking of glasses and the soft hum of music, I noticed something different in her eyes. A hesitation I hadn't seen before, a shadow behind the familiar warmth that had always drawn me in. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but as the evening wore on, I couldn't ignore it.
We had planned this party together, meticulously, making sure every detail reflected the years we'd spent side by side. There were photographs from our wedding day, decades of vacations, children, and grandchildren. Each photo on the walls seemed to be smiling at us, reminding me of the life we had, the life I thought was perfect. Evelyn had insisted on organizing everything, her energy infectious, her laughter lighting up the room. Yet when I caught her in the kitchen, stepping away from the crowd, a rare tension stiffened her shoulders. I approached her carefully, pretending to check on the drinks. I asked if she was enjoying herself. She smiled, the practiced smile I had grown used to over the years, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Of course," she said softly. "It's wonderful." I nodded, sensing that something was being left unsaid. Something heavy, something she hadn't admitted, even to herself. I had learned over the years that these moments were crucial. The smallest hints could carry truths that the loudest arguments might never reveal. Later, as the music softened and most of the guests had started drifting toward the dance floor, I found myself alone with her in the living room. I suggested we sit for a moment. She hesitated, then agreed, taking a seat on the edge of the couch. I sat beside her, careful not to crowd her, careful not to startle her. I could feel my heart beating, the anticipation almost unbearable. This wasn't about confrontation or anger. It was about clarity. 30 years of marriage had taught me to recognize when something important needed to be said, and I knew tonight was one of those times. I began slowly, recounting memories from our early days. Our first date at a small cafe in Brighton, the way she had laughed when I had spilled coffee across the table, the nervous excitement we had felt when we moved into our first apartment. I spoke of the vacations we had taken, the long drives through the countryside, the late-night conversations in our tiny kitchen when the children were asleep. I reminded her of the nights we had stayed up planning our future, dreaming about the family we would raise, the home we would create together. She listened quietly, nodding occasionally, her hands folded in her lap. There was a tension, a restraint in her posture, a subtle tightness around her eyes. I paused, letting the silence stretch. I knew that silence. It was the kind of silence that carried words unspoken, the kind of silence that builds up over years. I leaned slightly closer and said, "Evelyn, is there something you've been holding back? Something you haven't wanted to admit, even to me?" Her hands trembled slightly, and I felt the weight of anticipation pressing down. She looked away at first, toward the framed photographs on the wall, as if gathering courage from the past. Then she exhaled deeply, the sound almost a confession in itself. "Adrian," she began softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "I've carried this for a long time." My pulse quickened, but I didn't interrupt. I had learned patience over these years. The most important revelations could not be rushed. She continued, recounting feelings I had sensed but never fully understood. She spoke of moments where she had felt distant, disconnected, not because of anger, resentment, or lack of love, but because of her own inner struggles, fears, and disappointments that she had never voiced. She admitted to feeling overwhelmed at times, uncertain if she could meet the expectations we had both silently agreed to over the years. "I didn't want to admit it," she said, "because I didn't want to hurt you, and I didn't want to shatter what we've built. But there were times when I felt lost in us, in the life we created, even when I loved you more than anything." Her words were calm, measured, yet each syllable carried years of unspoken emotion. I listened without judgment, without anger, absorbing the weight of her confession. In that moment, I realized that 30 years of marriage wasn't just about shared laughter and milestones. It was about weathering the quiet storms together, about understanding the silent battles fought in each other's hearts. I reached for her hand, feeling the warmth, the vulnerability, the honesty she had finally allowed to surface. We spoke for hours, the party fading around us as we navigated the complex terrain of 3 decades together. She told me about the moments of doubt, the nights she had cried silently, the pressure she had felt to maintain perfection while silently battling fatigue and fear. I shared my own perspective, the moments when I had felt invisible, unsure if she still saw me as the partner she once had. There was no blame, no recrimination, just a raw, honest exchange of emotions that had been buried beneath layers of routine and habit. By the time we returned to the celebration, a quiet understanding had settled between us. There were still challenges ahead, unspoken fears and inevitable missteps. But the confession had created a bridge built on honesty, vulnerability, and mutual respect. For the first time in a long time, I felt as if the distance that had silently grown between us over the years had been acknowledged, and for the first time, it felt navigable. As we rejoined the party, holding hands discreetly, I realized that this night was more than an anniversary. It was a turning point, a quiet revelation that love, after 30 years, wasn't about perfection, fireworks, or grand gestures. It was about endurance, honesty, and the courage to admit truths even when they are uncomfortable. Evelyn looked at me, her eyes reflecting a mixture of relief and lingering vulnerability, and I smiled back, understanding without words the weight she had finally released. In that moment, I understood something fundamental. Marriage, at its core, is not a series of grand, dramatic revelations, but a collection of small, honest admissions shared quietly between two people who have chosen to navigate life together. Tonight, Evelyn confessed what she had never admitted before, and in so doing, she reminded me of the enduring strength of our bond. 30 years had taught us resilience, patience, and commitment, but tonight, it also taught us the value of honesty. As the night drew to a close, I watched her laugh again, lighter, freer, the subtle shadow that had lingered in her eyes now softened. We danced quietly, the music wrapping around us, the party fading into the background. There was no grand gesture, no dramatic confrontation, no perfect resolution. Just two people, 30 years older, navigating the complexities of love with honesty, patience, and quiet understanding. It was imperfect, real, and profoundly human. And as I held her close, I knew that this confession, finally voiced, had not weakened our marriage, it had strengthened it. In the end, the truth had set us free, not from each other, but from the silent walls we had unknowingly built between us over decades. And in that freedom, I found a deeper appreciation for the life we had created, the journey we had shared, and the enduring love that, despite its flaws and unspoken fears, had carried us through 30 years together.